Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Zain Bando. That's Anthony Balester. This is a new episode of Forever Power 5. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DiMart, Anthony at Balester555, and Zan at ZanBando99. You can follow the Empty the Bench Network at ETB Network across social media. You can follow this show at FP5 ETB on Twitter and Instagram. You can type in Forever Power 5 on Facebook, and you can follow us on TikTok at Forever Power 5, no caps or spaces. You can follow all Empty the Bench shows on youtube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on etbpodcast.com. And you can listen to Forever Power 5 wherever you get your podcasts. And this show, Forever Power 5, is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. Okay, so we lead off with, we have to talk about the playoffs. We're making picks with the playoffs, playoff picks. So first game, Boise State at Penn State. Boise, it's a neutral site game. Boise State versus Penn State. Penn State is giving 11. So I'll go to you guys first.
Sure. So I'll start on this one. Simply put, it's the battle of Ashton Jeanty versus Penn State's run defense. I think it's going to tell the tale as to how this game is going to go. I like Penn State overall, though, to cover this number. I just think they're better at every position. And I think as a very prominent insider, Josh Pate for CBS Sports put it well the other day. He goes, if Penn State can get back to their passing attack in the way that it did in the Big Ten Championship, which nearly beat Oregon, I think that Boise State's in for a long game. So I really like this Penn State minus 11 number to neutralize Boise State and advance in the college football playoff. I just think that even though Boise State had a great year and they had a great story and they arguably have the most exciting player in college football, I think holistically as a team, Penn State is better. I like them to win, cover, and advance in the college football playoff. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, I agree right with you. I think this is going to be a blowout. I know we had a lot of blowouts last week, so I think this would be one of those as well. I just think Penn State defensively is just way too good. I don't see how Boise State's going to be able to block those guys like Abdul Carter. He's going to wreak havoc on that offensive line. And I know Ashton Jeanty is real close to breaking Barry Sanders' all-time rushing record. I honestly think he will break that record because – obviously, no matter what the score is, Boise State's just going to hand him the ball every single play. So I think he'll break the record, but I think this is going to get ugly really fast. And like I said, Penn State's just way too good. I think Drew Aller's going to have a really good game. I know their passing attack is really one-dimensional. They only got one guy in Tyler Warren, but that guy, even if you put two or three guys on him, still can't be stopped. So I think Penn State's going to win this one and cover easily.
All right, so I'll give my thoughts. The short answer is I think Penn State's going to win by a pretty big margin. I think they cover this. So we're all in agreement that Penn State minus 11.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kept talking a lot about Penn State just having such an easy path, even though they lost to Oregon. And I do find it funny how, like, for so many years, people were like clamoring for college football to be more like college basketball and put in all of these like sort of lower level teams like a Boise State or a UCF or something like that, just like you see in basketball. And now that they're playing, Penn State are like 11-point favorites. I can see this. I really could see this being a total blowout, depending on how well Penn State plays. I could see there being a game where Ashton Jeanty has an amazing game, rushes for like well over 100 yards. He can rush for like 150 yards, 200 yards even. And Boise State still loses. Like because I feel like Boise State are kind of one-trick ponies offensively. I think they have Ashton Jeanty, but overall the team is really just not that great. if Penn State plays the way that they played against Oregon in the second half, I think Penn State wins by a huge margin. I think they win by probably more than 2 touchdowns. So I really like Penn State this game. All right. Arizona State versus Texas. Texas are 2 touchdown favorites. They're giving 13.5. What do you guys think on this?
Yeah, I'll start. I guess I'll just start again. ASU, great story. Kenny Dillingham is building a really, really nice program there. But I think Texas is a team on a mission. I think Quinn Ewers is still proving everybody wrong. There's all these rumblings going on about, is he staying at Texas? Is he going to choose to go to the NFL? Whatever he chooses to do, I think this is still a prove me wrong type of game. And I think Arizona State is the perfect opponent to do that against. And I actually think the Texas's defense neutralizes the entire game and wins this game comfortably. I think this line is perfect where it is. If it was anything bigger than 13.5, I might go thumbs middle and say that Arizona State it'd be good enough to cover this. But again, very, very similar to Boise State. If they cannot get Cam Scatterbo going, it's going to be a long day. I will take Texas to cover this number and move on to the semifinal. How about you guys?
Yeah, I think Texas wins and covers as well. There's way too talented, and this could get ugly as well. I think Arizona State is probably better and not as one-dimensional as Boise State. Obviously, we know Cam Scatterbo is their offense, but Sam Levitt is a pretty good quality quarterback, and I think he's got NFL potential.
I would say so too.
I know Tyson, the wide receiver, has been one of the best receivers in the conference. I know he's dealing with some injuries. So even if he could play, he's definitely going to be limited. If he doesn't play, obviously that's going to be a huge loss for them. Defensively, Arizona State, I don't completely trust their pass rush, and I'm not sure if they're going to be able to force Quinn Ewers into those turnovers, which is what usually causes Texas problems. So I think Texas's run game will be dominant in this one. I think Quinn Ewers will be dominant in this one, and I think this will be another blowout. And give me Texas to win and cover.
Oh yeah, so this is getting boring. I totally agree. I love Texas this game. I made the mistake of taking Clemson to cover against Texas last week.
Yep.
Actually, that was close. Actually, Cade Klubnik kept Clemson in that game.
Yeah, they only missed the cover by like 2.5 points. They were close.
Actually, yeah. Right? It was less. It was like half a point. By game time, it was a 13.5 point spread.
Yeah, that's
went way up.
That's as bad beat as you could possibly.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad.
Well, I don't think it was that bad of a beat because I don't think Clemson really had any business covering. I thought Texas would make more mistakes. I mean, Texas is undoubtedly a more talented team than Clemson and certainly a more talented team than Arizona State.
Well, I tend to disagree with you because Clemson was driving late in the game to cut it to 7 and they turned it over. So they were close.
Yeah, that is true. That part is true. Mm-hmm. But I'm just saying in general, I think Texas is a much more talented team than Clemson. What I thought was going to happen was we were going to see a similar Texas team that we saw against Texas A&M, which was like I don't think that game was close. Like that game was not close, the Texas A&M game, but it was closer in terms of the point differential than it should have been because Texas made a whole bunch of mistakes,
right?
Which is what I thought was going to happen with Clemson. I think I don't know if I would say this is too big of a stage for Arizona State, although it is a little bit of a unique situation.
It is.
It undoubtedly is true that Texas is built for this a little more than Arizona State is. And I'm not saying that proves anything. That doesn't mean Arizona State can't beat them. But I do think the talent differential is too big in a sense. I think the quarterback play is much different. I think the defense is also just that much different. I mean, Texas's front is one of the best fronts in college football, and I think they're going to give Arizona State fits. I think I think I have very little doubt that Texas will win this game. Now, I do find it interesting that the team that is the 13.5 point underdog is the team that had the bye. That's funny. You don't normally see that, which I think it just has a lot to do with the format and everything.
Well, it has a lot to do with the fact, too, that Arizona State won the Big 12 and Texas didn't win the SEC.
Which also just proves how little winning your conference tells you when it comes about a team when it comes to evaluating them. I mean, like, I think a 13.5-point spread says a lot more about a team than the fact that one team won their conference.
I agree.
Just objectively.
Agree. This is one of those games where the spread 100% matters, no question about it.
So, I think that's something that, and we could talk about that later. But yeah, I mean, my pick is Texas minus 13.5. I think I have very little doubt that Texas will win. I think how this game will go will very much depend on Texas's turnovers. And when Texas has a lot of turnovers, usually it's against a team that forces them or has a very good defense. Like if you look at it, like when they played against Georgia, well, Georgia is one of the best defenses in college football. Arizona State does not. So I don't think Arizona State is going to force a whole bunch of turnovers by Texas. And of all the teams that Arizona State has played this year, Texas probably is the best defense that they played against. I mean, is there even any argument there? So I think that I also think that Texas's front will contain Cam Scatterbo to an extent, at least. So yeah, I like Texas. I'll swallow the 2 touchdowns. This is the most interesting line so far. Oregon versus Ohio State. Of course, Oregon's first game is against Ohio State. Ohio State's giving 2.5. I'm surprised Ohio State is actually the team that's favored. That surprises me the most.
Not only are they favored, but it's even more surprising considering when these two teams went head-to-head in Eugene in October, Oregon was able to win that game 32-31, and they were the ones that won the Big Ten outright to begin with. So yeah, this line is very, very shocking. So,
well, in fairness, they beat them by 1 point in their own stadium. So if anything, like I thought that Ohio State likely was a better team than Oregon, but overall at the time I thought that. But now I've really just like everybody else, I've really warmed up to Oregon, and I believe in them a lot more. I think a lot of this has to do with how badly Ohio State beat Tennessee.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, in beating them 42-17 in the fashion that it did, and being up 21-0 in the first quarter is something I think very few people expect.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna. So Zam, what's your pick on this game?
I like Oregon in the outright upset. I just think they're a little bit more fundamentally sound, and I think that Dylan Gabriel has said it all year that he's on a mission with his teammates, and that he came to Oregon to win a national championship, and I think he's going to do everything he can to keep his team season alive, and I think they win in an absolute thriller, 38-31, in one of the best Rose Bowls we've seen in a long time.
So you like Oregon 38-31.
Yep.
All right, Anthony, where are you going on this?
Yeah, it's weird hearing Zan saying that he's picking Oregon in the upset because I thought for sure Oregon would be the favorite in this one. So I'm definitely shocked at this point.
I think we all did.
But I'm honestly, I said a preseason that Ohio State was going to win the championship. At this point, I can't change my mind. I'm going to go with Ohio State, and what I think should be what considered is the upset, Ohio State winning. But I'm going to pick Ohio State to win and cover. I know that game against Michigan was very awful. But I feel like this lit a fire under this team's ass, if I'm being honest with you guys. And they know Ryan Day, he's not going to get fired, but they know winning the national championship is the only way you can possibly get these fans to forget about your record and your recent struggles against Michigan. You win the national championship, honestly, no one's going to care about that Michigan game. So they have a lot to play for. And, you know, the way they looked against Tennessee, the offensive line really held up against a really good defense. They have a good defensive front. They got great pass rushers, and they held up pretty well. And Will Howard, probably after having his worst game against Michigan as an Ohio State quarterback, probably had his best performance as an Ohio State quarterback. He was phenomenal against Tennessee. And with Jeremiah Smith and those great running backs, I expect an absolute shootout. I think Dylan Gabriel and James at running back with obviously Stewart at receiver. They're going to put up a lot of points. So I think this is going to be a historic game, probably the best game so far we've seen in the playoffs. Maybe honestly the best game we're going to see all year, just like the first matchup was. But I think Will Howard will be able to do just enough. Expect Jeremiah Smith to get another touchdown, and I think Ohio State's going to win and cover this game.
All right. So
Anthony, what's your final score? I gave mine. What's yours? What do you got?
I'm gonna say 41-38 Ohio State.
Overtime or regulation?
Regulation.
Okay.
You guys are picking. You guys are predicting just shootouts.
Yeah.
I would say. So yeah, Ohio State's offense looked great against Tennessee. They put up 42 points against Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee, we're not used to saying this, had one of the best defenses, and certainly in the SEC, I would say. So that was very impressive. I mean, right now, Ohio State, depending on their game plan, has one of the best offenses in college football. Like I said, depending on their game plan, and certainly one of the best defenses in college football. And I mean, I will say the one issue I have with Ohio State is that they have shown a lot more weakness throughout the season than Oregon has. I mean, Oregon is the team that, I mean, Oregon showed a lot of weakness earlier in the season, and Wisconsin kind of gave them trouble, but they ended up winning. So there are certainly a lot more concerns I have about Ohio State. I think Ohio State seems to have the potential to lay an egg a lot worse than Oregon does. I also kind of agree with Zan that the Michigan loss lit a fire underneath them a little bit. I really do think that did happen. And
that was Anthony who said that.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was Anthony who said that. One of you said it. And yeah, sorry. Yeah, I very much agree with Anthony on that. I really think that the Michigan loss lit a fire under Ohio State. And the truth is, it is also true that just because the Michigan loss was really bad, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be bad for the remainder of the playoffs. Like, that doesn't mean that exactly. And given their game plan against Tennessee, I mean, that team I think could beat anybody. But I'm still going to take Oregon. I still believe in them a lot more. Mainly just because they haven't shown the weaknesses that Ohio State has shown throughout the regular season. And it doesn't mean necessarily that that's going to show, in this game in particular. But right now, I think Oregon is still a better team. And I would predict this game to be a little lower scoring. I would say I think Oregon wins 31-28 if I were to pick a score. And just cover the spread by half a point. I could see. I think the game is going to be close, but I still like Oregon to be able to win this. I mean, I think they're a whole nother animal than Tennessee. All right, Georgia versus Notre Dame. Interesting that Georgia are 2.5-point favorites when their quarterback is hurt. Carson Beck will not be playing. So Zan, I'll go to you first on this game because I do.
Yeah, I mean, I think even without Beck, Georgia wins. I just think, it's a different beast when you play an all SEC schedule versus Notre Dame, where Notre Dame gets to pick its opponents and gets to feel comfortable with who they play. I think it's a totally different thing. I just think Georgia's a better team overall, even without Carson Beck. So I like them to win and cover pretty comfortably, maybe to win between 10 and 13 points.
Okay, you have a final score pick?
I would say somewhere around like 27-13 or so. I think Notre Dame starts out hot. They take an early lead, and then the wheels fall off with the turnover right before halftime, and it breaks the game open. That's what I think.
All right, what do you think, Anthony?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Georgia to win. I think it'll be a low-scoring game. I just think stylistically Georgia's a bad matchup for Notre Dame. Notre Dame obviously loves to run the ball and have their offense predicated around Jeremiah Love. I think Georgia will be able to stop that and limit that. And obviously I think they'll be able to force Riley Leonard in the passing situations. And I think as a passer, Riley Leonard can struggle if you take away his legs. On the flip side, Notre Dame does have a great defense. I love their secondary. And going up against Gunnar Stockton, you got it like that, which is why I think it's going to be low scoring. But one thing that definitely made me side with Georgia is Notre Dame lost a huge player last week. They lost Riley Mills, their defensive tackle, and him and Howard Cross are really crucial for this team. They're defensive anchors, and then they have that great secondary to go along with them. So with him being out, obviously that makes me want to side with Georgia even more. So give me Georgia to win and cover.
All right. So with this game, I think that's very true. Like Georgia does definitely match up well against Notre Dame. And if you look at coaching, I would certainly take Kirby Smart over Marcus Freeman. Not saying Marcus Freeman's a bad head coach, but I certainly would take Kirby, just head to head, I would take Kirby Smart over Marcus Freeman. I mean, yeah, it is interesting that like their starting quarterback gets hurt and it doesn't even seem to affect the game that much at all. I think that the game plan for Georgia sort of feels very obvious, which is that they want to make Riley Leonard uncomfortable and force him to throw. And the truth is, Notre Dame's offense, they love to run the ball. They have a really good run game. And their quarterback play, their passing game is a little shaky. I mean, Riley Leonard is a really good runner, but he's kind of outside of his comfort zone if he's forced to pass. Georgia, and we know this, so Georgia obviously knows this too. So I think that's what the game plan is going to be. You know what I think is going to happen? I think Notre Dame is going to do a lot better in the first half, and then in the second half, Georgia's really going to pull away. I can see Notre Dame winning this game at halftime, but then Georgia ending up just killing them in the second half.
So we both agree that potentially one mistake could break this game wide open in favor of Georgia. We're both kind of thinking on the same wavelength a little bit. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so too. And Notre Dame had a really good year this year, but there certainly are a lot of flaws offensively for sure. I mean, however, the flip side is even though like the quarterback play doesn't seem to make that much of a difference with Georgia, Gunnar Stockton is inexperienced. He's the backup, and I think Notre Dame's defense can give him a lot of trouble. And I think that will happen. I think it probably will happen in the first half of this game for sure. But I think that just overall, Georgia's a better team, and I think that they really have the blueprint to beat Notre Dame, which is they're going to force Riley Leonard to throw a lot, and they're going to make him a bit uncomfortable and not let Notre Dame run too much. Like, not let Notre Dame beat them just by running the ball down their throats. But I think the first half will be very interesting. But I do think that Georgia will pull through in the second half. And I think a lot of this is just based on, experience. Kirby Smart versus Marcus Freeman. I think a lot of this game will have to do with the game plan.
For sure. Yep.
And, Notre Dame, they had a good year, but you're right, Zan. Like, Georgia has played a gauntlet of a schedule compared to Notre Dame. Notre Dame's schedule has not been great. I mean,
nope.
Who is one of their strongest wins were against like Army and like USC.
Yeah, I was gonna say Army, USC, and even though this is more of a joke, it's true because they look good in the game. They played really well against a really bad Florida State team. I know that that doesn't mean much, but still a blowout win at home is still a blowout win at home. So it's just one of those things where it's all relative in the grand scheme. But when you compare these two schedules, you can't even really compare them because Georgia's is definitely 1,000% much tougher than Notre Dame's for sure.
I mean, the truth is Notre Dame never plays that difficult of a schedule. They usually play a fairly easy schedule.
Right.
But yes,
I mean, to be fair though, they did beat a pretty good Texas A&M team in the first game of the year. So
yeah, well, Notre Dame's schedule is never. It's always more on the weaker side. It's not necessarily the weakest in college football. Like there's usually teams that play weaker schedules. Like a lot of Big Ten West teams when they were divisions. Right. There were some Big Ten West teams that played really, really bad schedules. But Notre Dame, like compared to an SEC schedule, it just doesn't compare. So speaking of the SEC, Alabama is giving 12.5 versus Michigan. So it is odd to me that Alabama's playing Michigan because they were a step away from being in the college football playoff, and now they're playing a 7-5 Michigan team
in the ReliaQuest Bowl.
in the ReliaQuest Bowl. So I looked at the opt-outs. It seems like a lot of Michigan guys are opting out. It seems
that
like
way too, yeah.
but Jalen Milroe is playing, as far as I know.
That's correct. He announced it like 2 weeks ago that he was playing. Yep.
Yeah. So I'll go to you, Zan, first about the ReliaQuest Bowl.
Yeah, I like Alabama in this game. I think this is one of those games where it's a put up or shut up game for Kalen DeBoer in the sense that it gives Alabama fans some stability that going into next year, they'll try not to let this happen again, and they're taking on a Michigan team that's riding high off of 2 wins, where one win was a colossal upset against Ohio State, and the other win the week before was just against a brutally bad Northwestern team. So Michigan, even though the Ohio State game was impressive, you could also make the argument that Michigan doesn't even deserve to be in a bowl game. It's, I think, is Jalen Milroe's coming up, or just to show that he's still going to remain the face of Alabama football, at least for the time being. And this goes to show that maybe this could be a slap in the committee's face, that they actually might have deserved to make the college football playoff over SMU. That's another debate in itself. But I think this will be one of those games where it'll serve as an Alabama validation point, if you will, into next year. And I think they absolutely dominate Jerome Moore and the Wolverines 38-10. I think they covered this number no problem, and I actually think that this game is all but over at halftime.
Yeah, I can totally see this happening, by the way. Like Alabama missing the playoffs, which has happened before, and then they just dominate in their bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could totally see that happening. I mean, look, these two teams at full strength are not even comparable.
No.
Like at full strength, they're not even comparable.
This line arguably should be more than what it already is.
It might go up. It might go up like the Clemson line did. All right, Anthony, you're an Alabama fan.
Yeah, usually when it comes to these bowl games, I remember back, I think it was like a decade ago when Alabama didn't make it to the championship and they ended up getting destroyed by Oklahoma and Trevor Knight. Because usually when you play at Alabama, you expect to make the playoffs, and then when you don't, it's really hard to get those players motivated to play in a bowl game. But I think this year it's a little different because I think Jalen Milroe, I know he does have another year of eligibility left. I don't think he's going to use it. I think he's going to go to the NFL. He does got enough tools, and if he goes out and has a great game, he can potentially push himself to a late first-round pick. And we know how the NFL is. You go to the combine, and you show that you're big, fast, and strong, and you got all the tools, and we know how he is accurate when it comes to deep balls. There's probably going to be an NFL team that does fall in love with him. So, honestly, I think this is going to be an absolute blowout. Alabama's got a lot of players that are going to try to play their final game for Alabama. They also got guys like Ryan Williams who are trying to build on something for next year as well. And obviously, Kalen DeBoer wants to have a good outing because that's going to help with the transfer portal and make players want to come in as well. And Michigan, on the opposite end, a lot of their players are opting out and wanting to go to the draft. So I think this is going to be an absolute blowout by Alabama, and I don't think this will be relatively close.
Yeah. So what I was saying before is these two teams are not even comparable at full strength. Like at full strength, they're not even comparable. And both teams have a lot of players opting out, but it seems to be substantially more impactful for Michigan. I mean, on Alabama, I mean, look, there are some notable players from Alabama that are not playing, like Justice Haynes, Kendrick Law, Devontae Smith.
Well, speaking of Justice Haynes, funny enough, he's actually in the he just entered in the transfer portal, and it looks like he's gonna go to Michigan. So how funny is that?
Yeah. So those three players I would say are the most impactful, but it doesn't compare to Michigan. Michigan, I mean, the players that are entering the transfer portal in Michigan: Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart, Colston Loveland, Donovan Edwards and Will Johnson are all opting out of this game, which are some of their best players. So
It's because they're all
I
draft
think,
picks. Why risk the injury?
what's that?
They're all top draft picks, so like, why
Yeah,
risk the
yeah,
injury?
of course. I don't blame them for doing that, especially in a season like. Yeah, I'm not saying I blame them. It's just like obviously it's going to impact. Like these are Michigan's best players. Most of Michigan's best players are not even playing. So I really, really like Alabama to win and cover this game. I think they're a much better team, especially with the opt-outs and everything. I could see them. I think this game is probably going to be a blowout, or at least they'll win by more than 2 touchdowns for sure. Like Michigan, they're just not at full strength, and their season this year was. I mean, it's almost amazing they even made a bowl game. Like.
Yes, especially given all their quarterback issues and all that stuff. Like it was a whole ordeal, man.
Yeah.
At least they got Bryce Underwood.
Yeah, no kidding.
Colorado.
They could if he was available, they could use him in that game.
At 17 years old, he's better than anything they got right now.
Yeah, he probably is. So the Valera, the Alamo Bowl, Colorado versus BYU. The opt-outs in this, are there any really notable opt-outs in this game?
Not that I've seen. Anthony, have you seen anything?
No, I think Deion Sanders has a lot of his main players going, and I even seen something. He's got some insurance policy for guys like Travis Hunter, Shedeur, and Shiloh, and some of those other high draft picks. So if they were to get hurt, they are covered.
Yeah, I figured. I didn't see anything.
That's smart. More coaches should do that. That's smart.
Yeah. So what do you think about this game, Sam?
I don't know. I just like this kind of seems like a recipe for disaster for Colorado. They haven't played particularly well the last few weeks, and I think it's hilarious that it's Big 12 versus Big 12 in the bowl game.
Yeah, I love this game. It's like this bowl is like the hypothetical Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, you don't normally see this, and I don't know. I think BYU is going to win on some fluky ending, and I don't know. I just feel like this smells like one of those games to me that's just going to end in absolute heartbreak for Colorado. So give me BYU in the outright upset. Given that the spread is 4, what do you guys think?
Yeah, there's no way I'm not picking Colorado. I mean, it's Travis Hunter's last game at Colorado. It's Deion Sanders' last game with both his sons, with Shiloh and Shedeur. I don't think there's any way possible that they lose this game. I think Travis Hunter is going to have an unbelievable game. I think Shiloh and Shedeur are going to have one of their best games of the season. And I just can't see Deion having these players opting into this game, knowing it's their last game to play for their dad, and knowing this is Travis Hunter's last game in college. There's no way they're not going to play good, and there's no way they're not going to win. I know BYU has had its moments. They can play good defense. I do like their quarterback, Drake Rexloff. I think he could keep the game close, but there's no way Colorado's losing this game.
Yeah, their coach is a good coach too. Although he sometimes doesn't get the respect he deserves, but yeah. So
in this game, I really have a lot more faith in Colorado than I do in BYU. I mean, look, both of these teams, like every other Big 12 team, is kind of a wild card. It seems like we don't always know what we're going to get. Which makes picking some of these games to be so difficult. But I really like Colorado because I think that lately what they've shown me has been much better than what BYU has shown me. And if you look at the last 4 games that BYU has played, they went 2-2, and they likely could have went 1-3 if not for a holding call against Utah. And these were not. And that was against Utah's like the worst team in the Big 12, and they were lucky to win that game. So based on what they've shown me over the past almost 2 months, I don't really have much of a reason to believe in BYU. I think that BYU had a whole lot of hype in the first half of the season, and then they really cooled down. And I just don't have much faith in BYU. I think, they're on both sides. There aren't a ton of opt-outs. So I don't really have that to worry about. But I don't think BYU is that good. I really just don't. I mean, based on what we've seen from them, they could have been. I mean, yeah, they beat Houston the last week of the season, but like from what we've seen from them, when they played against Kansas and they played against Arizona State, they lost both of those games. So I just don't have any faith in them, to be honest. I like Colorado to win this and cover. South Carolina versus Illinois. Your Illinois, Zan. South Carolina, 9.5-point favorites.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one, and I guess I could reveal to you that I will be covering this game as media in Orlando, so I'm very, very excited about it. This is obviously a huge game for both sides. Illinois back in its first bowl game for the first time since its ReliaQuest Bowl loss to Mississippi State about a year and a half ago or so. This is a huge game for Illinois. The big drawback, though, is that it'll be without its leading receiver, Pat Bryant, who decided to opt for the NFL draft, so Illinois will be without him. And I just think all signs and all the numbers and all the history to me seem to point towards the South Carolina win. Unfortunately for me, I guess I just think overall South Carolina is a better team. It looks like Sellers is going to play, which I guess is good for their side. And I think Illinois is going to have a few lucky plays go its way, and I just don't see how it's possible. So I actually see South Carolina winning this game, but I really do like Illinois to cover the number. I think as long as Luke Altmaier stays upright and doesn't make too many mistakes, I think that Illinois will be in this game going into the fourth quarter, and anything will be possible. But with that being said, I like South Carolina's momentum. They won 6 in a row to end the regular season, and they were 1 or 2 plays away from potentially upsetting Alabama to clinch a college football playoff berth, which I think a lot of people would have liked to have seen, just given how competitive South Carolina was at the end of the year, and Illinois was when their own momentum streak going into the end of the season as well. So this should be a very, very competitive game, but I just think that South Carolina is slightly a little bit better, so give me them to win, but I like Illinois to cover the number. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think South Carolina is going to win as well. I just think that defense and that defensive line with Kennard and those guys is just going to be probably too much for Luke Altmaier. I do think Luke Altmaier has improved, but I just think South Carolina defensively is going to be too much. And obviously, Lenore Sellers is probably a Heisman candidate for next year. I mean, what that guy could do on the legs and how much he's improved as a passer as the season has gone on. I know Illinois has a good defense, but I just don't think they'll be able to stop him. I do want to say, Zan, there's this guy on Twitter I follow who kind of predicts the college bowl games. And during Selection Sunday, he was saying this was going to be Alabama and Illinois. So I thought it was going to be my team versus your team, but I guess they got South Carolina, and that's probably bad news for Illinois because right now South Carolina is probably the more scarier team. So give me South Carolina to win and cover.
Probably right, Anthony. Unfortunately, we'll see. Crazier things have happened. I'm looking forward to being there. And Nick D, who do you got?
So I'm a little torn on this. I like South Carolina to win, but not to cover.
So you agree with me there, okay?
So I generally agree with you. I agree with most of what you said. The thing is, there are a few opt-outs for South Carolina that are a little concerned. Actually, there's really only one that's really substantially concerning at all. I would say Kyle Kennard, the defensive end, is not playing. I think South Carolina has – the thing with South Carolina is they always show up for these games. Like the big games, South Carolina, they haven't won all of them, but they show up for these games. And
but again, it's a very similar scenario where I don't think Shane Beamer gets the respect he deserves. And frankly, even though I'm kind of in the sphere, if you will, I don't think Brett Bielema, from a national perspective, has gotten the respect that he deserves either. So I think this is one of those games where both.
So you think this is the disrespect bowl?
Yeah, 100%. And both teams are out to prove to the college football world that they're legit. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, well, I mean, South Carolina, this is the same team that just beat Clemson. They almost beat Alabama. They killed Texas A&M. I mean, South Carolina at their best they are one of the best teams in college football. Illinois isn't so bad either.
No,
Illinois,
they're not.
They're not so bad either. Their quarterback is good. So is South Carolina's quarterback. I think I think South Carolina wins this by about a touchdown, but doesn't cover the number, is what I think. I also think this game, I can also see this game being low scoring because South Carolina does have a very tough defense. So I could see this game going a similar way to the way it went against Clemson, like a 17-3 type of thing, possibly, or maybe a 17-10. Maybe they win by a slightly bigger margin than they did against Clemson, but I just think the game will be lower scoring is what I'm convinced.
Could you see a possible turnover deciding this game? Because I could.
Yeah, for sure. I could see South Carolina forcing a few turnovers against Illinois for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say, I know I mentioned Kyle Kernard. I know you said that he did opt out, but as a whole, South Carolina has a great defensive line, and they also still got Dylan Stewart. So that I heard that they gave him a huge NIL. The return.
Yeah, he's coming back. So it's huge. Yeah, big deal. Huge.
So I expect him to have a big game even without Kernard.
And people forget that if Lenora Sellers didn't get hurt against LSU, there's a really good chance they're just a 2-loss team.
Yeah, and there's also a chance too that if Illinois didn't lose to Minnesota in early November, they're a 2-loss team as well. So
yeah, well,
yeah, mm-hmm.
I guess we could play what if all you want, but at least in the South Carolina game, it was an injury to the quarterback.
For sure.
All right, Baylor is now giving 3.5 against versus LSU. The opt-outs, so LSU has a lot of opt-outs.
But is Nussmeier playing or no?
Nussmeier is playing, from my understanding. But I know, so Kyron Lacey isn't playing. Neither is Mason Taylor or Emory Jones. So LSU is so it's starting offense. Both of its starting offensive tackles and its tight end Mason Taylor declared early for the NFL draft. So that's going to be a pretty big. I think. In fact, that's the only reason that Baylor is even favored in this game. Otherwise, Baylor would not be favored. Baylor doesn't have enough opt-outs. It's not, or at least it's less impactful. Given that Nussmeier is playing, I mean, it's not quite as bad as it could be. But yeah, go ahead, Zan.
Yeah, I just feel like I like LSU in the outright upset. I think that Brian Kelly's been pissed all year. I think it's been a what could have been year for LSU, and I think this is one of those put up or shut up games for him where if he loses, he's going to be scrutinized in Baton Rouge all of seasons for what could have been. I actually think this is a must-win game for LSU, and I think they get it done against a Baylor team that, to be quite honest with you, doesn't really excite me all that much. And again, it's very similar to what we talked about earlier in the show, just in schedule comparison. And I think you really can't compare the Big 12 schedule making to the SEC's. The SEC wins every time, and I think with that being said, the talent gap is just too much. So I like LSU to win this game outright in a would be upset. So.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Zan. I just want to say on Baylor's end, they are a pretty hot team. I know their schedule hasn't been really that difficult, but they have been winning a decent amount of games. And I think Sawyer Robinson, the quarterback for Baylor, just had a decent breakout year. So you got to give Baylor at least some respect. And now with the opt-outs for LSU, obviously that makes this game even tougher to pick. But like you said, this being a must-win for Brian Kelly, and you do got Garrett Nussmeier, your best player. I think them alone will be able to get the win. It will be close. It'll probably be ugly. But give me LSU to barely win by a few points.
Yeah, I was going to say if he isn't playing, I think my pick would be different. But given that he is playing, I feel comfortable with that. So
I agree.
Yeah. So given that Garrett Nussmeier is playing, I can at least feel kind of okay about LSU, even though they have a lot of opt-outs. Their season this year was just a roller coaster ride, and a lot of how this game is going to go is very much going to depend on Garrett Nussmeier and how erratic he is in that particular game, because it seems like every LSU game this year was very much dependent on how erratic Garrett Nussmeier was. Like when he threw that interception against Texas A&M, the game just went off the rails at that point. And that was just it. And the game just, so I could see that being, so it very much depends on all of that against Baylor. The thing is that I don't think that Baylor's defense will give LSU fits the way SEC teams have. That's what I just don't think that they will. And I think this game will be very close. I like LSU to cover the 3.5. Over like at full strength, I would feel a lot more confident in LSU just winning the game outright. But I take LSU to cover the 3.5 points.
Okay.
I don't think Baylor will give them fits on offense, or Baylor's defense will give LSU's offense fits the way SEC teams have. So I really like LSU. I like LSU to at least cover.
Okay.
Missouri versus Iowa in
The Music City Bowl.
Yes, in the Music City Bowl. I'm looking at the opt-outs in this. Missouri doesn't seem to have that many Luther Burden is opting out, and that's their best wide receiver, so that could be kind of a big deal. But Iowa, Cade McNamara is actually opting out. He is entering the transfer portal, and Caleb Johnson. So So Caden McNamara and Caleb Johnson are both entering the transfer portal. I don't think Missouri is that good of a team,
I
but
don't think so either.
But it doesn't seem like the opt-outs are affecting them as badly as they're affecting Iowa.
No, well, I don't think so either. But with that being said, though, I am going to take Iowa just simply because I don't think Kirk Ferentz gets enough credit for who he does have leading the charge. And I know that his players, aren't these flashy household names, but they find ways to win. And I think that this will be an ugly defensive slugfest where I think one turnover could decide the game. And even with those opt-outs, I just think that Iowa's defense is a little bit better than Missouri's front. So give me Iowa in the outright upset.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I'm going to go with Iowa as well. I mean, pretty much the opt-outs kind of cancel out. You got Missouri's best player, Luther Burden, out. Caleb Johnson for Iowa out. Both those guys are going to go to the NFL next season. Obviously, I just think Iowa defensively could just cause this Missouri offense fits. I don't really trust Missouri at all. I know they've been ranked, and the college football committee seems to really like Missouri, and they always find a reason to give them in the rankings. But we know that they're overrated, and I think Iowa is going to prove them wrong right here. So give me Iowa to win in the upset.
So given Iowa lost their starting quarterback and their best running back, Caleb Johnson, I find it a little. I mean, I don't think Missouri is that good of a team, but I think the opt-outs are just going to hurt Iowa too much. I think I'm going to go with Missouri to win and cover, even though I don't think they're that good of a team. I can see this game being a slugfest. I agree. Like without Luther Burden, I think Missouri's offense is not going to be good. I also think Iowa's offense, like I can see Iowa putting up like hardly any. I can see them putting up like 10 points the whole game.
Oh yeah, this will be one of the most low-scoring games of the entire bowl slate. Period.
In fact, I could very much see this being a push.
It could be very much.
But if I were to take, but believe it or not, I am going to take Missouri in this game. Louisville -2.5 versus Washington. When it comes to the opt-outs in this game, Tyler Shuck is actually Ja'Cory Brooks are both opting out. So those are pretty big deals, I would say. When your starting quarterback and your best wide receiver are both opting out. So it seems like the opt-outs for Washington are a little less impactful than with Louisville, considering their starting quarterback and best wide receiver are both opting out. In this game, I still, even though like Washington is not a great team and Louisville actually had a fairly good year, just because of the opt-outs, I'm taking Washington. I don't know how much I can trust Louisville's backup quarterback.
I like Louisville simply because I just trust Jeff Bromworth, and I do at Fish. Although I could very well see this game going either way. I just think that Louisville is slightly better, but Washington playing in the Big Ten in its first season, nothing to sweat at a better second half of the year. Moving forward, I feel like this is when they can go either way, but I'm going to go conservative and take Louisville to cover the spread.
Yeah, those opt-outs definitely scare me a little bit. Obviously, if it was an opt-out, I'd feel more confident. But I think Louisville's freshman running backs with Brown, I think those guys would be enough to get the win over Washington. It can definitely be close. I think if Shunk and those guys were playing, this would probably be a blowout. But because of that, it would be a close game. But I still think because of those running backs and because of that talent that Louisville still does have, give me Louisville to win and cover.
All right. So we just have to talk about this quickly. And it's actually a question. Is Lincoln Riley in trouble?
I would argue yes.
You think so? I argue no, he's not. I think this is just a typical growing pain that you see with college football teams. I think he will be fine. There's a few reasons I say he's not in trouble. One of them is it's really just, like I said, you see growing pains like this all the time. It reminds me a lot of Jim Harbaugh's third year at Michigan in 2017, where he didn't have a great year. I mean, I would say he's probably Michigan that year was a little better than USC was this year. And everybody was scrutinizing Jim Harbaugh. And they were all wrong. They all turned out to be wrong. I think it is a similar thing this year with Lincoln Riley. And I think USC will be fine. The other reason I think he'll be fine is coaching a team like USC is not like coaching a team like Alabama. There's a little bit more patience and a little bit more grace for you when you're a head coach of a team like, say, USC than, like, say, a whole lot of SEC and Big Ten teams where in that town – all they care about is the college football team. It's a little different at a school like USC, where in a town like LA, where they have a whole lot of professional teams, and it's just a little different. Like the culture is a little different. So that's my thought. I don't really think he's in that much trouble at all. It's his third season. I think USC will be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he may not be in trouble now, but what definitely definitely scares me a little bit is he's an offensive guy. And 3 of his top 4 receivers just entered the transfer portal. So that definitely scares me. And if he doesn't bring in some talented receivers in the transfer portal, I'm not sure his team is going to be talented enough to compete. And if he has another bad season next year, he can be in some serious trouble.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, that is certainly true. But I think that is what – I think things like this happen a lot. And it really just depends on how whether or not the coach is willing to make adjustments. And I think Lincoln Riley will be able to make adjustments because he's done so in the past. He's certainly done so in the past, and he's also he's really good at developing quarterbacks. Really good at developing quarterbacks. How many Heisman contenders at least has he created? I mean, like when he was at Oklahoma,
a lot.
Almost all the quarterbacks under Lincoln Riley when he was at Oklahoma were stars. Almost all of them. Just from Baker Mayfield to Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, just like I'm probably forgetting somebody. Just stars that played under Lincoln Riley. And I really have a lot of faith in him as a head coach because he's proven himself. He's really proven himself. I think the biggest issue this year was probably their offensive line. They had a very young offensive line, and their offensive line was not great. And the team was also just young.
Agreed.
USC this year was a very young team, and it was also their first year playing in the Big Ten, traveling across country when they were a team on the West Coast playing in like Central and East Coast time zones. I mean, like, I think that's a lot of adjustments, especially for young players.
All new, yep.
So I really think Lincoln Riley will be fine. I think he'll end up winning a national championship at some point with USC. I think a lot of this is just a bit of an overreaction. So we have to end the show with unnecessary wagers. So here I go. South Carolina money line versus Illinois. Alabama minus 6.5 first half spread against Michigan. Oregon money line against Ohio State. LSU plus 3.5. Ashton Genty, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, and Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren as anytime touchdown scorers. Penn State money line. Drew Aller for 200 or more passing yards, and Drew Aller for 202 or more passing touchdowns. Quinn Ewers for 225 or more passing yards, and Texas minus 13.5. And Jeremiah Love and Trevor Etienne as anytime touchdown scorers.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. So that is my unnecessary wager of the week, of the show. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. This is Forever Power 5. We will be we'll be back next week. So thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Have a good one. And Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. That too. Happy New Year.